Socials. Ethan Janney here with Piano Tech Radio Hour. About to get the show started. We're going to let our live studio audience in as well on the Zoom call. Hey there, everyone on Zoom. Welcome. We got the stream going out there. I'm going to spotlight myself. I'll spotlight our guest for today. Do a little bit of introduction, and then we'll get into the show. If you're new here, this is Piano Tech Radio Hour, and I will explain what's going on. So just sit tight here, and then we'll get going. And it's a show that we do every week. We've been doing it since, I don't know, many years. I guess I don't want to estimate, but we definitely have well over 200 episodes. So that's like 4, maybe 5 years here. It's been fun. All right, let's intro. Let's tell you guys what's going on. This is Piano Tech Radio Hour. And what we do here is we gather every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the music and piano world. This could be piano manufacturers, rebuilders. It could be musicians, makers of other instruments. And of course, as always, our foundational audience and participants in piano tech. Our mutual goal is to become better at our crafts, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses. That's an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can also subscribe to this program, Radio Hour, for just $16 a month. You get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, all the archival recordings of over 200 episodes in our member area. You can join using the link bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. We also have an audio-only version of the program if you want to check out the podcast, pianotechradio.com. We have a Substack where we feature content about pianos on Substack, Piano Technicians Masterclass.substack.com, and you get a peek into what's in our archives of our subscription for higher end piano technicians. You can also check us out on socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And then finally, make sure you get on our email list by going to pianotechniciansmasterclass.com and just enter your name and email address, and you'll be on the list and you can find out more about the program. All right. I would love to introduce our guest for today. Her name is Elena Riu. She has performed internationally at major halls and festivals, including Wigmore Hall and the Royal Festival Hall. She has commissioned and premiered over 40 new works, including Sir John Tavener's Ypakoe, written especially for her, and co-edited contemporary piano collections published by Boosey Hawkes. A professor at Trinity Laban Conservatoire of Music and Dance, Elena brings together performance teaching, artistic direction, and musician health advocacy, shaping a career that bridges excellence and openness. Elena, welcome to Piano Tech
Hi.
Radio Hour.
Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we love to do in the front here is take a walk down memory lane. When you were a child, your first memories of music and how it touched you so deeply that it would become so central in your life.
Okay, well, that's a tough one because I grew up in a household where my dad was a great music aficionado, but he was from Spain. So we listened to a huge variety of music because I grew up in Venezuela, so you couldn't avoid salsa because he was blaring out. I love salsa, by the way. And my dad had a great, he really loved flamenco, even though he was from Catalonia, he really liked. So we had we grew up listening to the greatest flamenco recordings, and classical music and salsa. And then my younger brother was a rock guitarist. So we also had this imposition of listening to rock and blues music like for hours on end. Um, I think so. I can't really pinpoint the moment where I just had a piece of music and it was just like a particular one that I made me decide to become a pianist. But I started having piano lessons at 8, and then from then on I developed more of an interest and more of a passion for music. But it wasn't like, a moment where like I just had a sort of epiphany and I had one thing. And also because I did a lot of ballet, so I would have been exposed to a lot of that classical music through ballet.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, I love all the mix of things. It's almost inevitable at that point. You have so many different influences to draw upon. And this begs the question, where are you located at this point in time on the globe?
I have been living in London for most of my adult life, so I came over with a scholarship from the Venezuelan government when we had a real government, and they had the money to provide scholarships to lots of people. So I was lucky to win a scholarship to come to London, and then I've stayed. I mean, I've gone out of London and come back, but basically this is where I've been living most of the time. Yes.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, truly a global citizen. Um, One of our guests, I mentioned him probably too often, but he's one of my favorite guests, is Chano Dominguez. Do you know Chano Dominguez?
No.
Flamenco jazz pianist.
Ah, sounds great.
You might enjoy his music. Of course, he's from Spain. I met him in Brooklyn, New York. I believe he's moved back to Spain now, but very talented, and yeah, played lots of high profile stages throughout the globe. Very talented guy. Um,
I'll check him out.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll
Yeah.
make an introduction too.
Okay.
So tell me what your focus is these days in terms of, your artistic performances and your practice and your study and your development.
So I do a variety of things, as you've gathered. So I lecture at music college universities. Now they've all become universities. So I have that teaching path. And I've also developed a lot of interest in research in musicians' health because I'm also a professional yoga teacher. So I developed the dance became yoga throughout the years, over the years. And then, I've kind of deepened my study of how to help musicians become more embodied because, there's so many problems with injury that can be prevented and joint problems and, of course, performance related anxiety, which is a bit
Mm,
of a plague,
mm,
and terrible posture, postural habits that nobody really addresses till they become chronic.
mm,
So I have been also teaching yoga to the piano department students at Trinity and also to the dancers because we're a bit like Juliet, we're joined with
mm.
dance and music.
Wonderful.
And that has become more of a thing as well with my career. Um, and also I work with female musicians and the menstrual cycle, which is I know very avant-garde and an area of like I think I'm probably one of the very few musicians who's addressing this red elephant in the room and about how all this affects performers who are women in a different way.
Mm,
And piano wise, I've been very involved in contemporary piano playing for a long time, also Spanish music. So I've been showcasing the music of female composers a lot recently from my books as well, from my commissions. But equally, I'm now developing more of an interest in French early music like Couperin and Rameau. And I think that comes from having delved quite a lot in Soler, who's a Spanish Baroque composer. So I think from Soler I've moved into the French Baroque. I mean, really, really love this music. So, again, I have very kind of eclectic taste. I'm going to be putting on a concert at the Painted Hall in the Royal Naval College next week, where myself and some students from the keyboard department are putting on a performance of all the Monpeau songs and dances for solo piano, which is very rarely done complete. So that's also very close to my heart because I'm from Catalan. My dad was Catalan, and I've championed Monpeau's music for many, many years when people didn't really know who he was. And so I'm really, really very excited to be putting all these amazing piano pieces together in one program.
Wonderful. Okay. Got lots of questions and avenues to go down, but I want to make sure we get some exposure to your work. What would you recommend our first taste is for today's program? You've shared some files. Was able to download that video that you just shared as well. What would you
Well, that
recommend?
little video is of a piece that I commissioned. I tend to work with some composers over the years, and so I work with a Canadian composer called Douglas Finch, and I commissioned a couple of pieces or more from him. And this is one of the pieces from, I'm going to show you because I came prepared. Normally I'm not. From my Salsa Nueva
Mm,
commission with Boosey and Hawkes. And it's a little piece he wrote to me called, actually that's not from that book, it's from this book. It's from the R&B collection.
mm.
And it's a piece that he wrote when he was really jet lagged, and it's called Ode to Sun Ra. And I played that a lot, and I recorded it, and this was part of a performance in a festival at Trinity Laban that I took part in.
Okay. All right. So let's check this one out. Here we go. All right. I love that ending. That's great.
Yeah.
It's a little bit hard. Do you know what the chord is there at the end? So you're
It's
kind of
just
like
like,
holding and
yeah, I'm holding and then releasing the pedal, and you can hear the overtones.
yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. I love including facets like that. Um, I just have this question I want to get back to. So it's a little bit off the topic of this piece, but I want to make sure I cover it. and then maybe we might go to this other video. Because you mentioned something that I actually feel resonates with me quite a bit. The idea of becoming embodied. And I really resonate with this personally. And I feel like I go in and out of it depending on my phase in life, you know. And there's so much to talk about here. It's going to sound a little rough, but we'll get to some target here. I think you're going to get what I'm talking about. Number one, I feel like there's a lot of cultural pressure to not be embodied. To look at a screen, to kind of move around your body too weird, like, um, and, but I do remember specifically as a piano player when I was studying in university, I had one of these things where I'd like get my shoulders up and and everybody they would say, Ethan, you look really tense. I'd be like, no, that's how I play. And and you would see, some of your idols, jazz musicians or something doing those kind of moves. And so you would be kind of, um, you know, you felt like justified, right? Or like it was almost a way to do it. But I remember getting into meditation and like yoga and feeling more embodied, like you said. And the playing, I mean, it's literally as though the music can channel through you better when your body is um resonant, and everything's functional and the posture's good. And
Yeah.
um so I want to share that our audience here, we have a lot of piano technicians on the
Uh-huh.
audience as well. And I feel like even there too, because they're not all musicians. Musicians may have a tendency to get a little bit more embodied. Piano technicians, these guys and gals need yoga. I'm telling you, because you got that piano tuning
Yeah.
hammer all day long. I don't know. Anyways, tell me. I want you to reflect on my thoughts here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, everything is telling us not to be embodied more and more, and especially, young people. They now are saying that because of spending all our time looking down at the phone, they're saying that the next generation is going to be born with a C-shaped neck, in the cervical spine. Instead of
Hmm.
having that curve, it's going to be like that,
Mm,
like mutation, from this constant. And if you think that when you play the piano, we also tend to be either looking down at the keyboard or forward neck posture, craning up your
mm,
neck to to look at
mhm.
the score, because you don't want to miss a note and you're so kind of stressed about it. um People suffer, as most musicians suffer from upper body, issues like neck ache,
Shoulders, yeah, the back.
trapezius, yeah, or jaw, a lot of stuff happening
Mm,
in the jaw, and then it all travels down the arm, and then it's very easy for a teacher to say relax.
mm.
But I hate that word, and then often, when people are angry,
The
or
command,
women are told a lot to relax and chill. But yeah, but tell me how to do it, because
right?
of course we all want to relax, but it's not just there's no magic word. It's not just a concept. As you know, you have to work at it. You have to find what is it that can make your body, as you said, become more resonant and enter a state of more flow. But to do that, you have to also know how your nervous system works, because you see all these jazz people, they may be doing that in a performance, but they may not be doing it in the practice room. You know what
Mm.
I mean? It could be part of the performance
Part of the
persona,
show, yeah.
and then when they practice, they're really, really aware, and they're doing lots of
Hmm.
things to correct and counteract. It's more about counteracting and about building awareness of, I mean, most of us don't even know we're doing that when we're playing, or, we're not aware because we haven't been trained to drop back into the body, every half an hour, even every hour. It's like I tell my students, just set an alarm on your phone. So every 50 minutes you do this and that. So even if your shoulder
Mm,
has been high, you can then counteract it by doing certain things,
mm,
regularly throughout your practice day. And also, using coherent breathing. I've trained with two amazing people in New York.
Mm,
They are both psychiatrists and they run something called Breath Body Mind.
mm,
And they teach at Columbia University, Dr. Brown and Dr. Gerbert. I love them. And they have written many books and they work with the breath to influence how the nervous system is working you and to bring it into more balance, because
mm,
musicians, of course, we're going to get stressed. There's no, we are going to get nervous. There's going to be some kind of entering an altered state, isn't it, before performing? And that can be perceived as a negative thing. And especially if you haven't practiced performing during your practice time. I know people, just practice learning the notes and repeating things, but the mindset is often also left out of the equation.
mm.
How to recreate your performing situation so that you feel that pressure before you turn up for the gig. And so most people are in a flight or freeze or both. And that's another area that, if you're not aware where you go, because, you may go into freeze, I may go into flight,
Mm.
you know, but rarely do we go into fight.
Mm.
Fight as in being ready for the performance, being ready to assert yourself, being courageous, being brave,
Right.
confronting the situation, so that's where I like to take people as well in these sessions of how to make your body feel like a warrior, like maybe if you perceive the performance as a threat, okay, we need to work because it isn't a threat. It's not a life or death situation. But how can you enter the performing scenario more empowered,
Mm.
physically and mentally, more ready to address whatever challenges the situation is going to throw at you?
Mm, that's fascinating. Yes, lately I've been um, studying a lot the parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system,
Yeah,
and the sympathetic nervous system is what you're talking about when you go into that fight, flight, or freeze.
yeah,
The heart rate goes up, and um, the stress hormones start flowing, and then the parasympathetic is, when your breathing is even and you're in a flow, you can be more in a flow state and so forth. And no matter what, it's great to have awareness around that and be able to move between the states, because I think it's when you're first learning about this stuff, it's easy to think that the parasympathetic state, the sort of calmer state, is kind of the one you want to be in.
exactly right. Yeah,
We want to be in that more, but I like the point that you made is you want to use that. It's like people say nerves are good for a performance. That's what they mean. They mean
yeah.
it's because you're getting the chemicals flowing in your body so you can focus, so you can perform, you know, right? That's kind of what you're getting at, yeah?
Yeah, it is because when you're talking about the flight and free, the flight element is when the sympathetic is in overdrive, but when the sympathetic is in regulation, in balance, is that you feel you have drive, you have energy, you
Hmm.
want to do things, because otherwise we wouldn't get out of bed. So it's exactly what you're saying. It isn't that you're meditating yourself out of, you're so spaced out that, I've been there. You turn up to a performance, you just did a headstand a minute before, you have no idea what's going on, and then you went on to the other extreme. So it's about balancing, isn't it? And also what happens for you as an individual, because if you go into freeze, which is parasympathetic overdrive, you need to get out of the freeze, because you won't be able to perform if you're like so scared that you're paralyzed, and
Hmm.
we've been there, your muscles are not responding,
Hmm.
you're not breathing, you're trying to hide, you want to leave the room. So everybody is affected in different ways, and also some people are affected halfway through the performance. It doesn't always
Oh
happen.
yeah.
It doesn't always
Uh-huh.
happen before, so you need to know how to respond if that happens halfway through, and also how you're responding you can practice that in the practice room. If you're somebody who always corrects yourself and gets pissed off in the middle of a performance because you make a mistake, because there
Mm,
are people who get really annoyed,
mm.
you need to think about in the rest of your life, how do you respond to that? Because getting annoyed is going to make you go down that rabbit hole, isn't it? Or getting more annoyed
Right.
and wanting to correct more, therefore stop and repeat things like
Takes
you're
your focus
practicing.
away from what you actually need to do.
Exactly, because a lot of people are just still practicing when they're performing. They're
Mm,
still in that frame of mind of
mm.
correction because they're practicing. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There's I don't know. Are you familiar with a fellow named Eitan Globerson? I feel like he might be Israeli. He might have been in the UK. Anyways, I worked with him a little bit, and he's a conductor, and he got into neuroscience a bit, and we were overlapping sort of circles. And this is one thing that he would talk about. He would call it trust your automaticity when you're
Okay.
performing. So automaticity, people don't use that word very often, but he used it all the time. And that's that ideally you practice to train your body to do things without thinking about them. And if you think
Yeah,
about them, that's when it gets messed up.
yeah. Yeah, and also,
Yeah.
to what is your focus? Because I think it's our fault as teachers is the training, and now, with CDs, it has become worse because the training is about unattainable perfection note
Mm,
wise. So you
mm,
hear a lot of people producing performances that are so utterly boring because the focus in the practice room is don't make a mistake,
sure.
correct the mistake. So it's like correct the mistake, correct the mistake. So what happens in performance? You bring in that into the performance. So when you hear a mistake, instead of just going, well, so what? I'm moving on,
Mm,
recover. You still go into, oh God, I made a mistake. I have to correct it. And then you go into the performance, and all you can listen to is what's going wrong.
mm.
Because in the practice room and in your lesson, your teacher has
Mm.
taught you to focus on the
What
problems
to
all the
fix? Yeah.
time and not on what's going right.
Mm,
So I tell my students to every time they run through a piece or perform, first thing to do is to write down three positive things about the performance. It doesn't
mm,
matter what it is. It could just be like I turned up.
mm,
I didn't run away. That's positive.
mm,
Or I really enjoyed the relationship with the audience, or I really enjoyed how I managed to sing through that phrase. Small things, but kind of that reinforces the positive, doesn't it? So you're looking for more positive things in your playing, and that builds confidence and trust, which is what you're saying. Confidence builds trust in your ability.
mm. Trust yourself to just do it.
Yeah, trust in yourself that you can do it.
I want to make sure we get a little bit more of your work. Do you have
Okay.
a thought for the next share?
No, I don't know. I mean, one of those yoga clips is me working with the dancers and the musicians at Trinity Laban, using
Okay.
some of the principles of coherent breathing and
Okay.
retraining in breath, body, mind
Yeah,
to
that sounds interesting.
their activating practices.
Okay. Yeah, this one's super short too. Let's check it
Yeah.
out. I love that. This is like I mean, what's fascinating about this is like it's the very thing that if you saw somebody like on the street doing this, you'd be like, that person is out of their mind. But it's like the exact thing that people need to do, right? To get, I guess, out of their mind in the right way, right?
Yeah, so this
Uh,
is a practice called a ha breath, and there are different ways, and obviously there are counterindications, which obviously I shared before. So these are practices that at the beginning, when people tell you to meditate, okay, so if you're very anxious, if you're suffering from a lot of performance anxiety, I know which usually is the result of more generalized anxiety
Mm,
about other things in your life or high levels of stress or your family, whatever happened before. If you sit down to meditate, it's usually really counterproductive because as soon as you sit down, the mind is going to seize the opportunity to run through all your shopping lists of all the negative stuff, and you are going to sit there in a loop. So the best approaches are bottom up. So you want to move people, you want to help people release tension from the body first.
mm,
You want people on their feet because we've been sitting for hours at the piano or playing the guitar, or except singers who stand. Most people sit for 6 hours a day, and then we're sitting like now at the computer for another 6 hours watching the telly. And this is really, really bad for the body, as you know, because we're designed to move, not to sit. And so you want people to be able to, and this is, Qigong, Tai Chi, it's not just yoga. You want to get rid of tension. So when I tell people to relax, this is a way to relax. You get rid of a layer of tension. And these practices are using the voice, which is also a way of releasing things out of the body.
mm,
And you are then activating yourself. So this practice is, for instance, really good for focusing. So if you're feeling really kind of lethargic and really lacking motivation, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, your practice is not going anywhere, you keep doing the same thing, you can just get up and do shaking and then doing the ha breath. And
mm,
that is going to really give you a sort of charge of energy. It's going to wake you up,
mm,
and it's going to, they loved you. You can see their faces. It's
mm,
going to make you feel quite empowered in your body.
mm,
Yeah. And it's going to bring you back into your body.
mm,
Yeah. And so that's why we do these standing practices first to activate, and then you get activated, but then at the same time afterwards you get um, regulated. Yeah. So that's what's happening with these type of practices at the beginning
yeah.
of a session. And then you go more into breathing with arms, coherent breathing, regulating the breath, the ratios of the breath, and then you lie down and do a wonderful yoga nidra at
Mm.
the end.
Yeah, I find what's fascinating about this is, and it's so unapparent, um, to the average person or even oneself if you know about this stuff, how instantly you can change your state. You know, you can get like if you're feeling like kind of low motivation or lethargic or even like pessimistic or whatever, with things like you just showed, all of us like literally, if you just have someone do jumping jacks and yell and stuff like this, all of a sudden, oh, they're like optimistic, ready to go, motivated, and but it's just really it's one of those things because it is so, like you said, embodied. It's hard to really realize that that's accessible at any moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, your physiology changes your mindset. So, you have these big motivational speakers like Robbins,
Yeah,
he knows about this. He gets people
absolutely.
moving all the time, just to get them out of the mind into the body, to get the energy up, to get them motivated, to get them in the body. So that changes your mental state.
Mm,
Very quickly, some of these practices can just get you out of this, more negative um, place that
mm.
we can go to in the mind, and then bring your energy level up. So it's like energizing you again, putting you in touch with your chi, and then you have a bit more energy to do whatever you need to do, and then you can come down at the end.
It's making me think about how we sort of train. So a couple of things. Like, first of all, you and I are having a Zoom here, so people who are watching. Sometimes people do consume this program while they're up doing other things, but it's almost like, there's this tendency, school and work and all these places. Hey, sit down. Please sit down while we're doing, everybody sit down. Be respectful, whatever. When in actuality, there probably should be, especially with like Zoom meetings, we would like everybody in this meeting to please be standing while we're doing this, right? So
Yeah,
that we can be getting stuff done, right? Because we'll be in a movement mode or something, right?
yeah.
Fascinating. Um, we are going to wrap up pretty soon here. We're wrapping up the program a little early today. I want to make sure that uh, we listen maybe to one more piece of yours because you had shared a Spotify.
Yeah,
You had
there's lots
shared a
of things.
Spotify, right? Yeah. And did
I
you have
mean, if
any
you want to,
specific?
you could share something from a composer that is really well known in the States, Tania Leon.
Okay.
She's Pulitzer Prize winning and everything, in the States. Or Gabriel Ortiz, also, who at the moment are very sort of popular. So that's from my Salsa Nueva.
Okay.
From the some recordings, but they're all in Spotify, or you could, yeah. So you
Okay.
could
Let
share
me
some
see
of
if
that.
let me make sure I can find this. So, Elena Riu, Elena Salsa Nueva. I just feel like it wasn't loaded yet. Okay. And then, so which track would be good from this album?
I mean, Tanya Leon is really good. That's called Tumbao. So that wraps up with
Tumbao.
the salsa
Yeah.
blasting out of everywhere as I grew up.
Perfect. Yeah. Let me get that going here. I'll share my audio and then we'll listen to that and then we'll wrap up here. So advanced computer audio, share, and Tumbao. Are you? There we go. All right. I would definitely call that salsa nueva. That sounds like salsa nueva.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite pieces. In fact, she's told me that since I commissioned this piece, I can't remember even when. My God, I'm going to look at the publishing date if I can find it. This was in the 2005.
Yeah.
It's become a really popular piece with pianists. And she
Hmm.
told me it's been played such a lot. So that was my intention when I commissioned these pieces. You commission a piece and usually you play it once or twice. The
Mm,
composer may get a fee or may not. And
hmm
my idea was that I wanted these composers to get paid, but not just once. I wanted them to get royalties. I
hmm
wanted them to all be published, and then I wanted them to all be in this CD, so that for many many years to come they still receive. It's royalties are bananas, but they still had some
Sure.
longevity in the project.
That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, and just to pick it apart, because I played some salsa and I just want to see if I've got some things right. So I was trying to remember what's the tumbao because the clave is like bop 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 bop
Uh-huh.
bop. That's the
Yeah.
clave, and then tumbao that's the actually the bass part. Boom
Yeah, that's
boom
boom,
boom
boom,
boom
boom,
boom.
boom, 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 boom.
Right.
So she alternates. She has a clave at the beginning, tam, 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 throughout the piece.
Yeah.
She's also using, can you hear the whistle, the Brazilian, a little bit,
hmm
ba bam, ba
hmm
bam, ba bam, bam. That's very also from samba, I think.
Mm.
Yeah,
But
and
I like how the name of it is sort of about the bass part, but it's actually
yeah,
quite mid-range and trebly in terms of the
yeah.
voicing of it,
And
which
it's
is
quite
fun.
tricky. There's some cluster jumps as well that you
Mm.
have to kind of
Right.
manage geographically and coming back. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Very
very
nice.
clever and so condensed. I know she's Cuban, so salsa was very much part of her heritage as well.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
thank
Well, we
you.
should wrap up soon.
Okay.
Anything you want to just leave as a last thought, like a link, a website, words of wisdom, all of the above.
Um, I think it's a difficult time for I think for perhaps for some young artists to believe that the path they have chosen is worthwhile and has meaning. But lately, with the news that we've had, I won't go into details. I have found that playing the piano is a real refuge away from so much horror and like in yoga, the yoga is supposed to take us from the gross state into a higher realm.
Mm,
And I was telling this to my students. I really felt recently how, you go and sit with your instrument and you play a beautiful piece of music, a deep piece of music, and it just lifts your vibration so quickly. You go into a much higher vibrational frequency, and that's what we need at the
mm,
moment in the world, because
mm,
the vibration has been really low
mm.
and it feeds of us the more we go into that. And I felt every time I played some beautiful Monpo, my soul just remembered that we are higher vibrational beings, and that we are, as artists, light workers.
Mm.
So I'm just telling to all of us who play music or work in the arts that we really are holding the light for beauty and high frequency. So keep at it.
All right. Well, those are some wonderful inspirational final thoughts. I appreciate the thought you put into that. I will outro the program. We'll jump off. And then typically after we close out this session, if you want to just jump back on the link, you and I'll have a quick wrap up after that.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we will say thank you all, including Elena and our live audience here for joining us for another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. And as always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses. That is cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. If you joined us today by signing up for this session individually, you could make your life more convenient. You could subscribe to this program just 16 bucks a month. You get the recording of today's session in our member area, as well as automatic registration for each week's new session. Sign up at bit.ly/join PTRH. Don't forget about the podcast, pianotechradio.com, the blog on Substack, the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and to sign up for our email list at the website. Just include your name and email, and we'll keep updating you about what's coming next.